I wanted to show everyone this. I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but this was the very first No BS marketing letter, December 1992. This is the cover shot. This is when the whole thing began. So disclaimer here. So my two questions, number one, why did you start it? Number two, tell us the story about the picture on the top.
Well, look, there were newsletters preceding this.
Of your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to answer your why, first one was in 1983.
Really? What was it called? Did you have a different name for it?
Yeah. So we had a couple of niche ones. Mm-hmm. So I had marketing your services was for speakers. So it was for the National Speakers Association kind of world. And I had a practice building letter for chiropractors, and then chiropractors and dentists. And that ran with our Success Track business. With Foster Hibbard mostly as a speaker, we had, I don't know, there were about 33,000 chiropractors at the time, and we ran over 11,000 of them through our seminars, which is pretty damn good market penetration. Then I had a business strategy letter, and it preceded this, and then this. Reason being that it was the centerpiece of everything else to deposit people into whatever else they came from. Mm-hmm. They bought a book and sent a piece of fan mail. They were in an audience. They bought a product, whatever. What are you going to do with them? And most people, by the way, didn't do anything with them. But I understood that the equity is in the customer, right? It's not in our business. It's not in the intellectual property, right? Most intellectual property value dies very shortly after its author dies. There are a few exceptions, like Hill, but really that's because somebody steps in and makes a massive effort to keep it alive. But, even if you take a more contemporary era, right, there's probably 100 name speakers, authors of books, et cetera, who died, let's say the same year Zig died, and nobody can name them, So the equity is in the customer, right? And I figured that out. And so now, how do you organize them, right? Because people that do have customers, they tend to just let them be free-range chickens and occasionally try and sell something to them. So if you look at like Disney, like Disney Shrine, see, Walt from the very beginning was brilliant at organizing the customers. And so the newsletter to me was the way to organize the customers and to get paid to sell them things. So I'm printing and mailing at their cost, not at mine, right? And we got more and more sophisticated about it as we went along.
I love to hear the history because 1992, I was 12 years old when the first one came out. So, and then I jumped into the world.
There we go. Yeah.
I jumped into the world when you had sold the company to Bill Glazer. That's kind of why I jumped into it, and then it shifted. And I'm just curious, like what was the evolution, over the years to now?
Well, so No BS Inner Circle was right around 5,000 active members the year I sold to Bill. And we had levels. So we had silver, which was only the newsletter subscription, and kind of a traditional newsletter model, right? 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, good deal, better deal, best deal, very much like the newsletter industry, right? And initially, we weren't using membership language. That came in the 90s. Before that, I was using subscription language. I wasn't using membership language. So we had silver, we had gold, which most were gold. We had gold plus, and we didn't add diamond until the Bill years. And we had mixed dog mastermind groups. By that I mean butcher maker, candlestick maker in the same group called Gold Plus. And Gold Plus VIP, one of those groups got access to me in between the 3 meetings of the year. The rest of them were just 3 meetings. Platinum got added maybe in the last 3 years before I sold to Bill. And that was info marketers only. And Bill was in Platinum. So Bill was a member, bought magnetic marketing at an event like, everybody else, and used it in his menswear retailing stores. And then has happened a lot in our world. He took what he was using so successfully for his menswear stores, which when I saw it, I said, you're further along than most, right? You could just put all this in a box and sell it to every other menswear retailer in the country if you want to, because you got everything and it's great, right? So then he became an info marketer to that industry. But that was a small industry and it was a shrinking industry. Succession was already hitting. And so dad had 3 stores. Kids didn't want anything to do with it. What are you going to do with them? Et cetera. So he was like, his shoulders were rubbing against the confining edges of the industry that he was in, and he wanted to play on a bigger stage. I had several reasons for selling, and so that's that.
And how many years did Bill run it for?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
You don't remember us fighting.
And I didn't go back, and so I didn't get these years, and I'm really bad at this. Yeah. Like I don't remember when somebody was born, I just don't. But I would say 12, 15 years. And a lot of people thought it was a partnership, and it worked nearly like a partnership, but it was not. I had equity without equity, but I didn't have equity. And then we had a succession of sales, as you know. Bill sold to an entrepreneur backed by private equity, all very nice people, but pretty incompetent. And they managed to do a fair amount of damage. And Bill and they parted in the aftermath of the sale unamicably. And I actually increased my role, renegotiated contract at their request in order to save them. Then there was another sale to a different private equity group that had actually financed
the first one.
Yeah, well, they layered debt on it, like a lot of private equity does, right? So as soon as the first group bought it, they piled debt on it so they could take a lot of money out of it. So now it's got this big, burden of debt on it. And the PE group that provided all the debt bought it at a fire sale price in order to protect their investment. And they were interesting people. Didn't understand anything. Their language was, we're going to just put professional managers in here to keep the trains running on time. And in that conversation, I said, you don't understand. There are no trains. We create them every day, every week, every month, and they couldn't get that. So then they sold at my engineering to Advantage, which for any number of reasons turned out not to be the utopian marriage that that we thought it was going to be.
What's interesting, I remember I was sitting in the office and I got the fax or the FedEx letter, something saying that Adam had bought it. And I was like, so sick to my stomach. I was like, oh, like if I'd have known that was like for sale. Because for all the reasons, I remember being like all bummed out about that. And then it was like 2 or 3 years later is when Adam emailed me and was like, hey. I'm like, oh, yes.
You know, that has turned out very well. I mean, you're a ideal match for a number of reasons. And it probably couldn't have found a better home. But much of it, other than the destruction they did that had to be reassembled, you know, much of it hasn't changed over all those years, except for the ramifications of online, right? Which was really one of the reasons I sold to Bill. I mean, it was we were in the sort of the very early stages in the 90s of anybody really, this is a marketing media and this is a publishing media. Ken McCarthy was probably very early. And Ken actually, he built our first website out of sympathy. and my client, Go by the Inch, he had a database system he had built for him, which he tweaked and installed for us, also out of sympathy. But so I knew this was going to be important. It shouldn't be allowed to change everything, but by God, it's going to be important, right? And just like managing 50 employees, I can do it. I just had no interest whatsoever in doing it. Bill in Platinum, of course, we had Corey Rudel in Platinum, we had Yannick Silver in Platinum, you know, so we had the early internet geeks with us, and he was fascinated with it. So great, you know, better you than me. and Bill actually liked managing salespeople, so better you than me. Because the other big growth thing we were missing was people on the phones, right? At least inbound, if not outbound. And so that's 2 of 4 reasons that I sold.
You know, it's interesting though, in just hearing the history and just taking a pause and thinking like, this newsletter has been around over 35 plus years, which that in and of itself is a remarkable feat. That, you know, not even including like the subscriptions and newsletters you were talking about even that predated that, you know, so that would extend it to, you know, almost 40 years. And I think that's a huge testament to, you know, the power of your writing, your ability to connect with your subscribers, to still have thousands of subscribers all those years later is a remarkable feat when you think about like the longevity of that business.
The longevity in the newsletter industry, the subscription model, right, where Agora is, and they are almost all investment/political newsletters.
Right.
There is no long-running marketing entrepreneur newsletter but us. There is none.
Right.
Gary had a pretty good run with the Gary Halbert letter, which was a unique creature in and of itself. But you're right in that there is no other long tenured newsletter in this category. And yeah, it says that I think we sort of have struck the right balance, right, of what interests people, motivates people, what makes people want to stay. And I think it also speaks to just the power of having, if not as your center, an important part of your business.
Right.
A print newsletter that arrives like a friend dropping by every month, and oh boy, gets unwrapped,
Yeah.
and oh boy, what's in here, and something out of it gets copied to send or show to somebody. See, I think that's, really powerful, even at the small business level.
Totally.
And people, underestimate how that works and how that works on the brain.
To me, that's why today is so special. Like, to unpack, nearly 40 years of subscription business knowledge and expertise, and unpack no one's done it better. And so to talk about like the number one strategies for attracting new subscribers, for keeping subscribers,